Jensen here. Tonight we are going to make some chicken and wild rice bowls. So we'll have some sauteed chicken with a chicken flavored wild rice, broccolini, roasted sweet potatoes, and some sauteed mushrooms and onions. And we're going to bake up a sourdough loaf. So let's get this guy flipped out. I'll get ready to score him up. And we'll do a nice big expansion score down the middle. Kind of go right back through it. And then I'm going to do kind of like a double wheat leaf design. Okay. I'll pop this in our nice and toasty hot Dutch oven that I've had preheating. As you can see, the poof of steam coming up. There we go. I'll put our lid back on, and then we are going to bake it for 20 minutes at 500, and then we'll take the lid off and bake it for 20 minutes at 450. So in the oven, 500, nice and toasty hot, and then bake it for 20 minutes. So 500 degrees for 20 minutes. And now we're going to get our rice going. So we are going to be making a wild rice, which is actually like a mix of a blend. So I have some basmati rice with some wild rice. So I have 1.5 cups of basmati rice with a 1/2 cup of a wild rice blend here on the bottom. We're going to rinse this, and then we are going to cook it. And I have 3.5 cups of water. So with the wild rice, you do need a little bit more water than a traditional like cooking rice method, because it needs a little bit more to soak up. But it's nice because it gives you a nice little texture in it. But I don't like a straight up full wild rice blend. I like it mixed with regular rice. There we go. Okay. Give it a good shake. I'm going to put it in my pan here. And then we are going to add in a scoop of chicken bouillon, because again, I want a nice kind of chicken flavor for it. I'm going to do a good sized scoop, and we'll mix this up. And then just a little splash of olive oil. So let's get this. And then I'm going to turn my back burner on high, and then once this comes to a nice boil, we'll put our lid on and we will let it simmer on low. But cooking it essentially the same way as regular rice on there. Just needs a bit more water. Grab a little bit of olive oil. And just a little drizzle. We're going to stir it and kind of coat those up. But again, I have a 1/2 cup of wild rice and 1.5 cups of basmati rice. Now, while that's coming to a nice boil, let's prep up our sweet potatoes. We're not going to put them in the oven until when we take the lid off our sourdough, but we'll have them prepped and ready. I'm going to do kind of a like Italian seasoning roast on them. We'll kind of cube them up, and they'll kind of go on our little rice bowls here. We're just going to take off this kind of outer dry bit of our sweet potato. I like to do a knife peel versus using a peeler, because I can get that drier, bit bit of the sweet potato off, as well as any of those kind of weird little lump bits of it. And it's pretty quick. And then we'll get this guy off. And just the best way to do it is I just cut off the top and the bottom. That way I have a nice level surface. And then you can just kind of hold it and slice it down. And you can get fairly close, but you can get, again, that more drier, whiter part of the sweet potato off, which is more fibrous and less flavor, and leave the sweeter, more moisture, tender parts. And okay, got those two up and ready. And then we're going to cube these guys up, but I think I'll slice them to disc first. Because sweet potatoes, while they roast up and get really tender, they are a pretty firm vegetable to chop up. And then, since I want them to kind of be in our rice bowl, I don't want my chunks to be of sweet potatoes to be too large. So I'm going to kind of cube them up fairly small on here. That way they'll be like tender little bites. That way you can eat them with all of the other little mix-ins. Here. I find sweet potatoes, I do love, whenever I do a rice bowl, I love sweet potatoes. I'll do them lots of different ways since we're kind of having like a pesto Italian kind of theme to it. So I'm going to do these roasted with Italian seasoning, but sometimes I'll do like a miso glaze on them and roast them up, which I also really love, and they're delicious, but I'm kind of keeping with the Italian theme for it. But they're just, I feel like sweet potatoes, so many people just keep them simple and, just roast them or put them with like something sweet. But savory is, I just love a good sweet potato that's done savory instead of, sweet. Let's get these guys. And then we will flavor up. We will season up our chicken and get those prepped up so that we can saute them for our bowls, prep up our other vegetables, and get our garlic mashed up so we can make saute up our broccolini with some garlic. And that's about kind of what we're got going here. Let's get these. Again, with the sweet potatoes, just try to get everyone around roughly the same size so that they'll bake up around the same size. I got my really big baking pan out, but I think my smaller one will suffice. So we're just going to use the half sheet. Less mess to clean up. I'll pop these on here, and that way. And then we're going to drizzle them with a little bit of olive oil, some onion powder, black pepper, garlic, salt, and Italian seasoning. But I'm going to first bunch them close together. That way I can kind of get them all coated in the beginning. So you don't need a whole lot of olive oil, just enough to make sure we get a nice kind of drizzle on them. And then we're going to use some onion powder, which will add a really great savory flavor and help crisp them up. We're going to use about 1.5 teaspoons, so a really good amount. I'm going to shake it around. Some Italian seasoning. I'm going to add in about 1 teaspoon. And so I'm going to kind of coat them up nicely. And there we go. Just a light dusting of pepper. And then some garlic salt. And then we're going to go in and we're going to really coat them all up so that we get that seasoning all over each piece. And then make sure you get all of your sweet potatoes kind of coated in that olive oil. There, roll it around. Really make sure you get them.
A question, how was the lunch today?
Oh, it was delicious and fantastic. The naan just turned out perfect, and the little burgerettes were delicious. My husband was like, "I'm gonna be good. I just want one," and then he had to have a second one, and I knew he would. But they were fantastic. And then the little marzipan bars, as you can see, we've just got 3 little ones left. They were a hit. Everyone really liked them on there. So it was just a delicious, kind of nice, lighter, kind of but delicious lunch. And I feel like anytime I make naan, it's just always a hit. And of course, I made sure we had hummus because that's where all the kids were like, "And do we have hummus?" And I was like, "We have hummus." Okay, we've got our sweet potatoes prepped up, which is good. I'm going to give my rice a nice stir over here because I'm starting to see a little bit of movement. So I'm going to give it a good stir. We're not going to put the lid on yet because I want a good vigorous boil. If you turn down your heat too soon, then you're kind of going to get a little bit of a crunch on your rice. It's going to take, you need that fast, vigorous boil first. So it kind of gets a good cook on it before you turn it down nice and low. Let's get our chicken prepped up and seasoned for it. So I've got our chicken breasts. We're going to fillet these in half, and then we'll season them up for it on here.
So what kind of rice are you using?
So I'm using a mixture of basmati and wild rice. So I have 1.5 cups of basmati rice with a 1/2 cup of a wild rice blend on there. And I feel like that gives me a really good mixture of kind of the rice. I find if I go all wild rice, it's just too much. But mixing it with a regular rice, really, I think you get the flavor and the texture of the wild rice without being over the top. So it's kind of my favorite way to do it. Let's get this. This is already a pretty thin one, but we'll cut it nicer. I'm filleting my chicken breasts in half to make them thinner. That way they'll saute up nice and quickly. And then after they're done sauteing, we'll cut them up into smaller pieces. That way we'll have some nice chunks of chicken to put on our bowls here. And always when you're trying to cut, fillet your chickens, try to cut against the grain, which is going to give you a shaggier look inside, but will give you a more tender piece of chicken because you're breaking up all of those fibers and tendons inside. There we go. And get our last one blade here. And then I'm just going to lay these out, and then we'll come back through and start seasoning them up. Got to make a lot of room for this. Okay, I've got our chicken here. Let me grab my hands a good rinse. Now, similar to our seasoning that we're going to be we used on our sweet potatoes, we're going to use kind of similar flavors on our chicken. But we're going to start off with our Worcestershire. Now, Worcestershire is a vinegar type base sauce. It has a nice acidity to it, in that the vinegar base in there is the acidity that helps break down the natural fat in the chicken, which leaves you with a really tender piece of meat at the end, nice and juicy. You don't get any vinegar taste at the end. All you get is a well seasoned, balanced piece of chicken that is very, very juicy and tender. So it's very pungent tasting when you eat it raw. Cooked up, you don't taste it at all, but it really does improve the flavor of your meat, as well as its juiciness. It's similar to the concept of using lemon juice or buttermilk to make a juicier chicken. And so that's why I use my Worcestershire. I really love it for it because it does really improve. I use a boat on pretty much. I use it on chicken, pork, and beef because it works well for them. Now I'm putting a nice dusting of onion powder over this. Give a nice savory flavor as well as a nice kind of golden crisp. We'll use our Italian seasoning. Nice little dusting of it. And let's take a quick pause because I'm hearing our rice and we've got a pretty good vigorous boil here. So I'm going to give this a one last stir, mix it up, and then I'm going to put the lid on and we're going to turn the heat all the way down to low and we're going to let it simmer and cook. Okay, let's finish up with our Italian seasoning. And then we're going to do some garlic salt. And a little black pepper. And we're going to flip these over and do it again.
You have a question. What cookware do you prefer?
So I have, I guess, three kind of types that I use. For my non-stick cooking, I use Hexclad, which I absolutely love. I got this set about a little over 2 years ago, and it's held up really well. I haven't damaged it, so that's a good sign. And it looks, it cleans really well, it cooks really well, conducts heat fairly well. So I really like that. And then for my metal pans, which I have my sauce pots, and then my baseware, I have All Clad, which I've had for over 16 years. I got them as a wedding gift. So they have really, they've stood the test of time. They've been with me for 16 years and they still cook up great and look wonderful and conduct heat really, really well. So I do love those. And then for my Dutch ovens and roasters, I have Le Creuset and Staub. Those are kind of what I've been gifted over the years. I will say I've been cooking since I was 13 years old and I love cooking. And so I have been gifted. I've bought very few kitchenware myself and I have been gifted stuff over the years as Christmas presents and birthdays to add to my collection, which has grown through the years. But those are kind of what I use and I love them. And they are more expensive, yes, but they have lasted the test of time. And that's to me, it's about whether they're going to last and if they work well, whether they're bougie. We're gonna add our little bit of garlic salt and our Italian seasoning. It's like my kitchen knives. I got my kitchen knives as a set as a wedding present from my siblings, and they're the Wusthof, and they've lasted over 16 years as well. So, if you have something that lasts and you don't ever have to replace it, that's a pretty good product. Okay, we've got these guys seasoned up, and we'll let them just kind of sit and marinate for a while. That way they'll kind of soak in those flavors, and then we'll start sautéing them off in our kind of second half of our cooking.
If you had to pick one, which one would it be, Hexclad or All Clad?
I would probably pick Hexclad because I use I will say I use my pans more than my pots. And I use a non-stick. And I know that's kind of crazy because I do use my own thing, but frying in a non-stick pan is hard. Although I guess All Clad has their non-stick and I just haven't used them. I I know. Oh, that's a hard one. I really, really like Hexclad. So that one's a tricky one. If you'd asked me 2 years ago, I would have said all clad all the way. But Hexclad is kind of making me a convert. I really, really like them. And I have not damaged them. And if you guys know me, I have broken a lot of things, and um, so I'm not gentle on my things. And I don't do the best, like the best of care, in the sense that I put things in the dishwasher that aren't supposed to go in the dishwasher, or things like that. You know what I mean? Like, there's definitely, where, you're not supposed to put your knives in the dishwasher. I do that sometimes. We all do that on there. But that just tells you if they can stand up through those times, they do well. Okay, we're gonna get our onions sliced up here because we're gonna saute these off for it. Let's get our broccolini prepped as well. Actually, let me get my garlic prepped up first. Here. I finally went and got some more garlic. I was tired. I was like, the one store was out of my little bags. And then I went to another store and they had 2 left. So of course I had to get the last 2. Get this. We're going to saute up our broccolini with some garlic. We'll save those for our little kind of butter sauce we're going to make. Mince these up. We'll get them sauteing. And we'll slice up our mushrooms. Here we go. And it looks like our sourdough is calling us, which is kind of perfect timing. Okay, we're going to bring our sweet potatoes over here because we'll pop these in the oven and we'll roast these underneath our sourdough at 450, but we'll pop them in after we take the lid off. Grab these guys out. So we have our sourdough here. We baked it for 20 minutes at 500. Now we're going to pop it back in here at 450 and bake for another 20 minutes. Get you guys off. Put these sweet potatoes that we coated in our Italian seasoning, onion powder, garlic, salt, and pepper right underneath there. And then I'm going to bring my temperature down to 450. And then we'll set this timer for 20 minutes. Okay, while that is baking up, let's get a start on our onions and our broccolini and all that jazz.
Can you go over what's on the chicken so far?
So the chicken right now we have coated with Worcestershire sauce, garlic, salt, Italian seasoning, onion powder, and a little bit of black pepper. And coated them on both sides, and we're just kind of letting them sit, doing a really quick marinade. I'm going to add in a little bit of olive oil over here. This is going to be for our broccolini. We can actually start, since we've got a lot of chicken here, we're going to start sauteing it off too. And we can start on our onions as well. A little bit of everything today. Not often do I use every burner on my stove at the same time. Okay, we're going to get them all warmed up. Now, when you guys were asking me about the difference between all clad and Hexclad, all clad conducts heat a lot faster than Hexclad. Hexclad has that coating on it, which means the pans take a little bit longer to heat up, and then it doesn't conduct the heat quite as fast as it does with all clad, which means that your pan needs a little bit longer to get there, and you typically have to heat and cook things on a slightly higher temperature than with the all clad on there. And so therefore, when you're switching, if you have both, if you're switching between the pans, you just have to be cognizant that you don't put your burners on too high, or you can burn stuff easily.
Question: is there a different taste between broccoli and broccolini?
Actually, there is a little bit of a taste difference between them. Broccolini is a little bit more mild, has less of that sulfury kind of bitter taste that broccoli has on there. And it's more, I will say, it's more tender in there on it. You don't have that big stalk that you have with that I want to say like the big giant stalk in the middle. You have lots of little tender ones, and with that you don't get as much of that kind of bittery flavor to it. I don't know.
No, this is a funny question. Do you ever use a garlic press?
I have used a garlic press, just not for pressing garlic. I use my garlic press for I used it as a meat tenderizer for years. Never ever used it as a garlic press. Used it as a meat tenderizer for years. Until I finally was like, you know what? I should just buy a meat tenderizer. And I finally, like 2 years ago, I broke down and I bought a meat tenderizer. And I was like, I don't need it. I don't need it. I would just take my garlic press, cover it up with some press and seal, and I whack my meat with it. And it worked great. It worked wonderful. Never used it as a garlic press because it was a pain to clean. Great meat tenderizer. Now I'm going to see, I don't know if I need all of this broccolini. So I'm going to save some for another day. Might be a good lunch thing, but we're going to use like 1.5 bits of this on here. So we've got our great things. Now I'm going to cut off just a little bit of our stalk here because that first bit, it's always a little bit dried out. So I don't want it on there. But if you like the stalky parts of broccoli and are not just in love with the florets, then broccolini is the way to go. It's just delicious. Okay, I've got my crispy garlic here, nice and wonderful. Now I'm going to turn my heat down really, really low, and we're going to saute our broccolini on a lower heat with this. I'm going to coat it. Let me get some tongs. We're going to flip it, and then I'm going to put my lid on it to kind of steam it so that it helps it get a nice, really vibrant green color to it. But I first want to kind of toss it in this nice garlicky base towards it. Okay, get every piece kind of coated up. Let me get my lid out. Also, bonus with the HexClad is they come with lids that have a little steaming vent on it, which is really, really nice for it. Let's get our chicken starting to saute off on here. So we'll put a couple fillets in here at a time. I think I can probably get one more in since we have a good amount of chicken that we need to saute off. Now we're going to do kind of a quick sear off on it. I'm going to cook it at around a 6-ish on each side for it. And then, I want a kind of a hot sear on it, 6, 7, but I don't want it so high that we're going to burn it towards things there. We're going to drop our onions in our back pan here to saute up. There we go. Let me grab, I can use our broccoli tongs for this. And get these going. And toss those. And let's get.
You have a question? Is that a glass stovetop?
It is, yes. It is a glass stovetop on there. And so it's electric for it. I used to think growing up, because growing up I always had, we had gas growing up. And I used to think I always wanted gas and I would love gas. And the crazy thing, as the older I've gotten and more used to it, I actually really like electric stoves and electric ovens because they're very, very consistent. Now, gas is gorgeous and beautiful, and I envy that. I love the look of them. I mean, I feel like, you know, the whole electric industry is missing something. They could make electric more beautiful than they are. They could do a lot to improve on that. But there is a consistency in the electric that it can cooks evenly and exactly at what you want, which you don't always get with gas, especially in the oven. Gas ovens are very finicky because they've got a flame that goes open and close, that turns off and on, that kind of changes your temperature frequently, takes longer. You know, just as like past Thanksgiving, I decided I was going to cook my Thanksgiving um, cinnamon rolls at my house instead of at my mom's house because I don't like cooking in her oven. And she has a nice, beautiful Viking range, but I can never cook them right in there because it's a gas oven and it just doesn't turn out right. It always takes forever and then they always get a little bit more dried out. So I was like, I'm going to cook them here, bring them over. And of course, they turned out beautiful when I cooked them out my way. And I brought them over and were absolutely perfect. And so I just really like it, consistency with it, you know, on there. We get our chicken cooking up here on it. And we've got our mushrooms. And then I'm going to start dicing up my garlic here because we're going to make a little bit of a like a herby sauce.
Do you ever bake chicken?
Not so much. I'm not a really big fan of baked chicken. I think it dries it out a lot for it. Now, I have broiled chicken, which is, I think, a little bit better than a straight up baking, which, yes, it's like the same thing of baking in the oven, but broiling is where you cook it at a really high temperature with the oven popped open just a little bit. So it's a really fast cook on it. But most of the time, unless I'm doing like wings, I'll do wings in the oven on my air fryer setting. I don't bake chicken, not chicken breasts at least, or I guess I do roast chicken on there. So I just say I don't do chicken breasts in the oven because chicken breasts don't have a lot of fat on them and the baking process really dries them out. But I do wings and full roasts in the oven. So I guess I have to amend that statement because my brain wasn't thinking exactly what I was processing. Let me get our broccoli here. I'm going to give it a nice flip here. As you see, we're starting to kind of get our steam up on it. Get our broccolini going. Nice. Wonderful. Just going to trap that moisture in and let its natural liquid kind of steam it up here. Toss our onions. Looking good. I think we're going to add in our mushrooms here now that we've got a pretty good saute on them. Because it's nice to have some just delicious sauteed mushrooms and onions to top on our little bowls. These add just a lot of flavor, but they're a really simple side to add. Let's see, we're looking pretty good here. Let these saute up for just a second longer on it, and then I'm going to grab a plate and we'll let our first round slip to the side. Again, I'm not used to having so much space or so many things on my phone. I always like to give them a good feel because that's when you know, but we've got a great saute on both sides. And filleting your chicken through so that you have nice thin pieces really allows for them to cook up nice and fast, but also allows for them to stay nice and juicy and tender. So we've got our first round of chicken sauteed off. We'll get our second round in our pan. I think I'm going to add just a smidge more olive oil to the pan. Look at these guys cooking. Slide these off in here. Okay. And we'll save those 3 for round 3 of the chicken. Okay, I'm going to get my garlic nice and minced up here because we're going to make just a herby garlic butter sauce that we can kind of drizzle over everything at the end, which will just add a bit of flavor that will kind of bring everything together, but just adds wonderful flavor. I'm just a sauce girl. I like to add a little sauce. My oldest daughter agrees. She feels like there needs to be a sauce for everything, and I agree. I like my sauces. Let's get our mushrooms here and our onions tossed.
You have a question. They saw a black cat. What are your cat's names?
So we have 3 cats, and our big, fluffy, furry one, which is black and white, is named Pepper. Her full name is Pepper Coco, which is a Swedish gingerbread cookie. And then our other ones, we have 2 other ones that are all black. One has a little spot, and that one with the little white spot is Charcoal, and she's kind of like a bigger one. And then there's Bandit, which is a smaller black one. They're all female on there, and they all like sleuth around and are naughty, and they like to go meow. Sometimes they'll be up there sitting and watching me as I'm cooking, hoping that they can steal a piece of chicken on there, and I'm always like, no. Here, give that a nice toss. Let's check our broccolini again. Look at that, getting lovely. Beautiful. Gorgeous. I'm going to rotate this on here. Let's get some of our other herbs going up. I've got some parsley, green onions, and fresh basil for this kind of garlic herb sauce that we're going to make. We're going to mince it all up, and then we'll kind of cook it with a little bit of butter. So I've got my garlic, our parsley, do a light little mince here. Our basil, just take off any of the bigger stalks of the basil leaves. There we go. And then once I've got them all kind of a slight chop on it, we'll go through and we'll do our quick mincing of it. I like to get them broken down just a little bit first. Okay. And then we'll melt up some butter, and then we'll let this kind of infuse in that butter, and it will be kind of like a nice little butter sauce that will just drizzle over, but lots of herb flavor to it. You could also kind of actually turn this into a chimichurri sauce almost by actually using lemon juice and olive oil as well. And I want to get these nice and minced up fine so that the flavors really infuse into our butter. Let's take a pause and flip our chicken. Flip with this. Beautiful. And we'll get our mushrooms here. We're getting a nice, gorgeous saute on them. Wonderful. I'll finish these off in a little bit with some garlic salt, but I always let them saute out first on their own, and then I add a little bit of salt at the end to help. But I want them to sweat out their natural juices first. Okay. Almost got this. Perfect. So just mincing it up so I don't have any, again, really big pieces. Perfect. So we've got our good little herby mince up. Let's sprinkle a little bit of garlic salt over our mushrooms and onions. That way they'll have some nice flavor. The salt will allow the mushrooms to continue sweating out the rest of their moisture in there, which will give them a slightly nicer crisp up on them, so their final little saute. What is this? And our broccolini is looking pretty good.
How often do you have to sharpen your knife?
I sharpen my knives probably every, 2 to 3 weeks. Now it depends on what I'm, cutting up and stuff like that. If I cut up certain things that dull my knives more, then I have to do them a little bit more frequently. But for the most part, every 2 to 3 weeks. And when I notice them like slipping on an onion or tomato or a pepper, that's when I know that they're ready to be sharpened up. Because those are your ones that if they snag a little on those are my like ones that I'm like, oh, I need to sharpen them up. Because if they don't cut through easily, if you feel like when you're cutting them, they're not slicing that first time and you have to saw, that's when your knife is dull. And then I have a honing steel. My knife set comes with a honing steel. And that's when I just take them off and put them there. So these are looking pretty good. I think we'll take these off and we'll put our last bits on. Looking good. And then I'm going to add, again, a little bit more olive oil to our base because we have lots of herbs in here and you want to have enough base on there to saute off. And we're a large family, so we have a lot of meat here.
Pamela says she just bought the hex pad and loves them.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I will just say, it took me a while to commit to buying them. I was very, very they were expensive. So I went back and forth. Should I get them? Should I get them? And I finally was like, I'm going to get them. And I got them. And I do not regret that decision at all. I absolutely love them. So I'm glad because they are a wonderful, wonderful pan. Okay. We've got our sweet potatoes right there underneath. Those are just about done, but look at our gorgeous loaf here. I'm going to grab my little trivet and we can get ready to take this out. Yeah. So whenever I bake, when I bake in a sourdough in our Dutch oven, I always like to take it out right away so that it stops baking on the bottom because I like a nice kind of blonde loaf with a nice golden brown crust on the bottom. Here is our beautiful scoring and our nice expansion. So looking gorgeous there. Perfect. We'll have a nice, lovely loaf to eat up with our dinner here. Let me grab a small little pan here because our mushrooms and onions are done. Beautiful. You see we've got this nice little golden brown sear on our mushrooms and our onions. So I'm going to slide this over to our warming one. I'm going to put my warmer on and We'll get some butter melting to make our herby butter. Let me grab a little bit of this. We'll melt about 3 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to turn my back burner all the way down to low. I actually pick it up because it's already hot from the mushroom, so that's going to melt pretty fast. Now that I have at least a good basin on there, I'm going to add in my fresh herbs. And we'll let those saute up. Let me grab a spoon. We're going to give this a nice stir, kind of coat it around, and let them saute just a little bit. Let me get my chicken here. We'll flip them because it looks like they're about halfway done. Yep, beautiful. Okay, looks like I'm done with this spatula now. And beautiful. So let's get there. I'm going to turn my pan down just a little bit. We've got our, take this since we don't need this anymore either. Clear out a little bit of our room here. So we have our broccolini over here. Let's give that a nice toss, and our rice should be just about done. So you see how it's steamed up? We've got a nice vibrant color to it. Perfect. I'm going to sprinkle this with a little bit of garlic salt on it. But it has already garlic in there, but we don't need to add much on here. Just a nice little dusting. And then I'm going to keep the lid off because it's nice and steamed now, but it allows it to kind of cook up on there, but you don't have to do a nice boil or anything like that or a steam. It's kind of like a saute steam. So it should be nice and tender. You can tell by that nice vibrant color. There we go. We've got our nice kind of herby butter in here. Letting it infuse. Beautiful. Let that sit there for just a second. I'm going to turn my pan down because our chicken is almost done here. You know what? I lied. We're going to actually use this. Take off some of these herbs to chop up our chicken for our bowl here. But let me grab a little splash of cream for our sauce. Now that they've infused into the butter. There we go. And just let it thicken up nicely. Just a little bit on there. That way you have a little bit of a base so that you can pour it. With it, you've got your basil, your parsley, your garlic, and your green onions with your butter in there. And then I'm going to add a little bit of garlic salt. And this will be a nice base that we'll be able to drizzle over everything on our little bowl. Okay, let's go grab our sweet potatoes out of our oven. Let me turn these off because I think these are ready to go off when we come back. And then we should be about ready to start prepping up. Perfect. So we've got our roasted sweet potatoes that we seasoned with Italian seasoning, onion powder, garlic, salt, and a little bit of pepper. They should be nice and tender on the outside. Let me grab a trivet to put these on since they're nice and hot. Put them away from that butter because I don't want to melt the butter. But again, they just have nice, wonderful flavor on them. That will be delicious. Okay, let's get this chicken off since it's nice and ready. Beautiful. And this pan is done, so we'll turn that off. Bring this over here. And move this over here. You can sit on there while it's waiting. That way we have a little space for our chicken. I'll bring my sourdough over here. That way we can look at this beautiful, gorgeous loaf. And then I'm going to chop up some of my chicken. I'm going to take from my bottom first because you don't want to cut up your hot chicken right away. Your hot chicken, you want to let it sit and cool just a little bit so you don't bring out all of your juices. So let me grab a fork right now. We can pull off some of our ones that have been resting on there. And it's the same goes with like a steak or any type of meat. You want to let it cool for about 5 minutes or let it rest before you cut it up on there. There we go. Beautiful. So we have our nice, juicy, delicious chicken here. Get a spatula for our sweet potatoes. So you can scrape these off. Let me grab. This is nice and hot. And then we got to give our rice a nice little stir. And we're going to kind of flip these over real quick. These are our sweet potatoes. Nice crispy on one side. We already lost 3 overboard. And now let's get a nice check out on our rice. Beautiful. So here is our wild rice that we seasoned with some chicken bouillon. A nice mixture. We did 1.5 cups of basmati rice with a 1/2 cup of wild rice. And it kind of gives you that little bits of wild rice throughout, but still not overwhelming with that texture, because wild rice has a lot of different, bits in there that can be a little overwhelming. So let's get ready to serve this up. And you know what? We're not serving it up on a plate. We're going to serve it up in a bowl because these are chicken bowls. Got to serve it up in our bowl. Okay. Let's get ready to serve up here. Let's start out. We're going to first put our base of our wild rice. Again, this is a mixture of basmati and wild rice that we seasoned up with chicken bouillon. So it has a lot of great flavor. I'm going to put a nice base there. Then we're going to add a scoop of our Italian roasted sweet potatoes. A nice stalk of our broccolini. On the side, we got to curve it in there to fit there. Our sautéed mushrooms and onions. And then right in the middle, we're going to put our sautéed chicken that we seasoned with Italian spices, garlic, salt, onion powder, and seared off in our pan. And we are going to drizzle this with our delicious herby sauce that we made with our garlic, basil, parsley, green onions, and then we will serve it with a slice of our homemade sourdough bread that we baked up. Just a delicious, simple, traditional recipe. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. So we've got our chicken and wild rice bowls, and you can always watch and cook along with us again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my Hexclad pans, I've got my All-Clad knives, all my cookware, all the different things that I use in my kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.